Hello gamers, I'm Encasiel, and in this video I want to talk about a topic that I keep seeing on YouTube and I feel most gaming YouTubers are wrong about. I'm talking about live service games. I will be focusing on MMOs as live service games, because MMOs are the games that made me fall in love with gaming. But some of the points I'm going to raise will apply to other games that are part of this category. This will be a bit of a long-winded discussion, so I would appreciate if you watch the whole thing before drawing any conclusions. I will try to keep it short and not go into too much details, especially when talking about technical stuff, but it will be a long video, so strap in. If you search on YouTube live service games, you will see the vast majority of videos are negative, usually vilifying live service games and mostly talking about monetization. And so very rarely they talk about the massive benefits of live service games that usually outweigh the negatives. And when they do talk about them, they usually brush them off like it's no big deal. I've even seen some takes where positives are seen as negatives, but more importantly, they don't offer solutions. As far as I have seen, they never talk about what we as the community should do and what is acceptable, so both us and the companies creating these games can win in these situations. And when they do talk about solutions, it's some 5-year-old logic that only considers what they want and nothing else. I do YouTube as a hobby. I don't care about gaining money from this, so my perspective is vastly different. I will not push an agenda because it gives me likes, subscribers or views. While I would like to see growth, because that would mean I'm doing a better job, I will never be ready to step over my principles and just echo things I don't believe in for the sake of growth. I understand these people do it because it creates an echo chamber with some communities, and at the end of the day it puts food on the table for them. I also understand that talking about good things is never as profitable or as far-reaching as talking about negatives. It does make sense. Very few people will press on a video that says everything is fine, rather than pressing on a video that says your house is on fire. To make myself clear, I am not saying those YouTubers are popular only because they talk about negative things. Often enough their videos are high quality, they are entertaining and very expressive. As far as I'm concerned, they do merit their success. All I'm saying is that often enough they release negative videos because this drives their engagement up and makes them more money compared to how much they would make if they had a balanced or positive opinion. And sadly, these videos have a negative impact on the gaming industry and the community. But they never care about that. All that matters is their own profit. You can often see, especially in the MMO YouTuber space, that people that have a balanced or positive opinion have way less subscribers and views than those that push a negative agenda. What bothers me personally, and the reason why I want to talk about this topic, is hypocrisy. Is when these YouTubers push an agenda that they clearly don't believe in just to get views. I'm not going to call out anyone in particular because I don't like smearing mud on others. But there are a ton of popular MMO YouTubers that claim to hate pay-to-win, but have pay-to-win mobile game ads on every single one of their videos. They are basically telling their viewers to go and play those games. Or once they talk about how they hate pay-to-win and then spend thousands on gachas or pay-to-winning in MMOs. A few months ago, I even saw a video of one such YouTuber admitting to being a real money trader and trying to justify it by saying it's not really that bad, while also saying pay to win is bad, when real money traders are the main reason why competitive MMOs will almost always be pay to win, regardless of the monetization. I need to make myself clear in this case as well. It's not about whatever opinion they might have. But I believe if someone genuinely holds such a view, they would act accordingly and not in clear opposition of what they preach. I also believe if you are making videos, you hold a certain level of responsibility towards your viewers. Everyone watching is a person, not just a number, and I believe that you, the viewer, should be shown a basic level of decency. I understand it's easy to lose yourself in your ego when you have hundreds of thousands or even millions of subscribers, but I still don't believe this justifies treating your viewers as a piggy bank. These are my grievances and the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic, both positives and the negatives. So let's start with the basics. What are live service games? To put it simply, they are games offered as a service, games that are continuously updated and expand over time with new content, features and functionality. And more often than not, these games are multiplayer games. So what does it take to make a live service game? Much like normal games, the studio will create a world, gameplay elements, features and content. Often enough, they need these elements to be really good. Sometimes they are just as good as single-player games. Let's take the story for example. We can take a look at games like Final Fantasy XIV, Elder Scrolls Online or Guild Wars 2, just to name a few. These games feature plenty of stories that could be full-fledged games on their own. The problem is that if you play a single-player game for 50 hours, you might say that was great fun. But if you play an MMO for 50 hours of story and then there is no content for you to explore, you will most likely call it a bad game, even if they would be identical and the games would cost the same. And this is maybe the first point where they start to differ. Live service games require content that can be explored in a continuous manner, something that can keep people entertained for a considerable amount of time. It takes just as much skill to create an MMO as it takes to create single-player games, but on top of that they require very intelligent people that can create various engaging systems that can keep the players entertained for much longer. Another point where it starts to differ is when talking about multiplayer, be it an MMORPG, which often has the most complex network solutions, or lobby-based games, or even survival games where the server solutions are pretty rudimentary. They all require this aspect. Often enough, the networking solutions are expensive and require extensive amount of work, and of course they require servers and personnel to keep those servers working properly. As we have seen in the case of Wayfinder, even when they release the game in early access, having server problems can have disastrous effects. On top of this, live service games need other elements. Usually they have community managers that handle news and engage with the community, they require support services, and so much more. They require continuous support. For single-player games, once the game is done, a skeleton crew is left to maybe fix bugs while the studio either moves on to another title or creates DLCs. Live service games require that continuous support, which translates into even more cost for the studio. Another aspect that is a constant struggle for live service games is cheating. Be it aim or wall hackers or real money traders or bots, they always have to deal with these problems. And this might be one of the hardest problems to deal with and one that never goes away. I don't even want to start talking about protecting against DDoS attacks and how incredibly expensive this is. That being said, for the most part, there are a lot of benefits to live service games. We as gamers end up with games that offer way more than single-player games ever could, and when they are done right, we can enjoy these games for years. And we often create unforgettable memories in them. Because of many of the elements that I previously mentioned, games offered as a service are so much more popular than other type of games. The chances are the vast majority of people watching this video are enjoying a live service game or have enjoyed one at some point. When we find that game that we really like, we don't want that experience to end, and that is normal. Of course, it will inevitably reach a point where we get bored, but that is when we should take breaks and play something else and maybe return to the game when we are ready to enjoy it again. So, if you spend just a second to think about it, you can see that these games require vastly more resources to make and, more importantly, to maintain. And this usually means they require 5, 10 or even 20 times more resources than other type of games. And this is when we can start talking about monetization. If a game ends up costing, let's say 10 times more, they cannot just charge 10 times the price. Let's take an unrealistic example. If the perfect MMORPG came out, whatever that might mean for you, and they decide to charge £1,000 each year for people playing the game, it would end up being a mostly dead game because not many people would be willing to spend that amount of money. Now, before you start typing a comment that is ridiculous, I agree, it's just a ridiculous and very simplified example. What I am trying to display with this is that usually these projects have a lot of costs and they need to generate profit. When someone pitches a game idea to an investor, they need to show why this will be worth investing over other projects, and nobody invests money just to break even. Entertainment is not some kind of charity work. In the MMO industry, we have seen the direct effects of this, having very few MMO releases around 2017. Investors simply didn't believe there was money to be made, not comparable to other games at the very least. Just recently, we have started to see studios picking up the MMO torch again, and in the future we will have plenty of MMOs that will be coming out. So where does that leave us? There are many things to be taken into consideration. We want good stories, good and engaging content, good features and gameplay, and the studios want money. So the million-dollar question is, how do we achieve that at the same time? From a developer's perspective, if they cannot charge all of us to justify creating these games over others, they get put in a position where they need to charge some of us more and some of us less. If you are worried about pay to win in MMOs, that war was lost long ago. For as long as real money traders will exist, there is nothing that can realistically be done, and anyone claiming otherwise is straight up lying. The only way there is going to be no pay to win is if there are not going to be any progression features, for example a battle arena game where each game you play you start from zero, or if the stats and gameplay is equalized for everyone. Maybe one day someone will come up with a solution to eliminate real money traders, and then we can talk about eliminating pay to win from games. But until then, if you are stuck on this no pay to win hill, you are doing more harm than good. In my opinion, there are vastly more important issues to think about, and having these people that do not understand this simple concept and are constantly creating noise about pay to win only results in the real issues being buried and not being given enough consideration. So since we're talking about monetization, we should talk about another element, which is pay for convenience. This can be both done in a good way or a bad way. If it affects the enjoyment of the game, it's done in a bad way. If it doesn't, it's done in a good way. To better understand what I mean, I will use one of my favorite games as an example. I'm talking about Black Desert Online. When it released, it had some of the worst monetization. Everything in-game was made in such a way to just force the players to spend. At that time, I could not recommend it to others. But it changed over the years, and now it is in a situation where I can fully recommend it. Because I don't want to speak about the hundreds of little systems and make this video long for no reason, I will just use inventory slots as an example for you to better understand what I mean. When BDO released, they gave the players very little inventory space, they made monsters drop many items, and overall, if you didn't want to spend on inventory slots, the game felt horrible to play. In the past few years they have completely changed this. Now, as a new player, you are given enough inventory slots to have an enjoyable experience. They also reduced the amount of items that just fill your inventory, they connected all banks and so on. They have made many changes that eliminated that problem, and if you choose to spend on inventory slots, you are doing so just for the extra convenience. I think this shows the difference between pay for convenience being done wrong and being done right. The game needs to be fun without trying to monetize every little aspect. And when they do monetize aspects, it needs to be done in such a way that it does not diminish the enjoyment of the game. Another monetary element that we sometimes see in these games is loot boxes. They are without a doubt extremely profitable, and regardless of what people say, most of us that play games will enjoy gambling in some form or another. It is fun. The problem I have with loot boxes and in general RNG mechanics is that they do not offer PT systems, and when they do, they are intentionally obscure. When it comes to a financial commitment, I think it should be extremely clear how much you could end up spending for getting whatever you want out of this. For example, if a loot box costs £1, you should be made aware that in the worst case scenario, if you want the legendary skin, you might end up spending £100. The existence of PTs and them clearly displaying how much you need to spend should be required for all of this. Of course, monetary issues are not the only problems that plague live service games. The fact that live service games get consistently updated is one of the main reasons why so many of us like them. However, just like most good things, there can be a dark side to this. Sometimes developers don't update the games properly. When it comes to content, there are creative liberties. What we have been seeing recently in gaming is a seasonal update schedule. I think knowing that the game will have consistent updates on a schedule and having things to look forward to is great. Of course, not all companies do this, and hopefully we will see this seasonal format being the new standard. But I wanted to approach a different subject. I'm talking about the core features and functionalities of these games. Over time, we see vast technological advances, and more often than not, developers without passion take the easy route and refuse to update their game, and when they do, most of them do the bare minimum. I will use one of the most popular MMORPGs of all times, World of Warcraft, as an example. In 2023, it still has chess pieces that are simply textures applied on the character models. This is just one example, but server structures, graphical engines, gameplay features, all of these need to be constantly updated to keep up with the times. These games are sold as live service games, and I think it is unacceptable when they feel and play like all games. I think live service games should always feel and play like they were released in the past couple of years, and there is no reasonable excuse for them not being so, especially if they are popular. Because if very few people play them, they might not have the money to invest in these improvements. But we're not talking about the bottom of the barrel games here. I'm also not talking about the games completely changing their style or gameplay. I'm just talking about keeping up with the times. On the bright side, there are a few examples of games that respect their player base and continuously do these updates. Warframe and Black Desert Online are games that come to mind immediately. There are probably others, but personally I think this should become an industry standard. I could probably talk for hours about these topics because I love live service games, more specifically MMORPGs, but I think this video is already too long and I covered the main points that needed to be discussed. In conclusion, I think live service games are one of the best things that happened in gaming, and they bring so many benefits and allow us to have some of the best times we had in gaming. They come with their own problems, and I think we as gamers should understand this and push towards solutions that are both realistic and achievable. There are many improvements to be made, and hopefully with time these situations will improve. Feel free to let me know what you think about this and what else can be done for our gaming environment to be better. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. I wanted to say that we reached 300 subscribers and wanted to thank all of you for supporting me in this hobby of mine. As for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. Feel free to like and subscribe. See you in the next one, gamers.